There were few kinds of media in the Soviet Union: vinyl records, compact cassette, and of course reels. And today we will have a look at them. If you are interested in such stuff, you might already have seen electronica or Olymp range, but of course you understand that these machines are very expensive and regular people were not using them. But what were they using? One of these machines is this Saturn 202-2 stereo. This machine was made by Karl Marx Omsk electromechanic factory, and the reason why you can't really find a lot of machines under that brand name, of course you can find some, since their main focus was not civilian electronics. There were 3 or so different modifications of the unit, and the third one of them was made fully out of plastic. This one has a really nice wooden frame, but also this is what makes it insanely heavy. This unit is 18 kilograms. Wow and flutter on the 9th speed is around 0.1%, on the 19th speed it's double that, 0.2%. But a lot of people claim that it's lower, a lot of people claim that it's higher than that. From my experience, this machine has no noticeable wow and flutter on 19th speed, so I believe that official documentation is correct. Sound quality of this machine for standard ferric tape like this, B3715 made by Svema, would be from 40 Hz to 20,000 Hz on the 19th speed. Also, one version of this machine had built-in speakers. I believe it's the plastic version that came later, and I think it's a bit silly, but this machine from 1986 only supports external speakers, and its built amplifier can do 10 watts per channel. This unit has 2 speeds, and the speed selector is here. This button here is to engage recording, and of course you can change the level here. It's unfortunately separate. This handle here is for operation of the unit, to engage different modes. This is the pause button, tape counter, and this is the reset button. This block here is basic equalization for both channels, balance and volume. This button here is to use headphones and disable amplifier for the speakers. This socket here is used for a remote control, of course a wired remote control, and this could be used to pause the playback. Here under the plastic cover, our erase head, our both recording and playback head, our pinch roller, that is a pretty big pinch roller, and our capstan. Under here is a little cover with a sponge, and this is because unlike compact cassettes, reels still need to be pushed against the head, but of course the tape can't do that by itself. And it's pretty important to make sure that this sponge is still capable of serving its purpose. What's typical for these machines is that most functions are purely mechanical, and this is done through this operation handle. For example, to fast forward, you move the handle to the right. To rewind, to the left. Middle position is stop, and if you want to set it to play, you push the handle in and rotate it to the right. Also, what I did not mention before are these buttons. Of course, you would guess that the I1 is to power the unit on, and this is actually correct, but why does it have 2 buttons? As stated on this cover, автоматическое отключение, that means automatic shut off, because when you press this button, there will be an electromagnet pushing the button in, and when the internal timer counts to 0, it will automatically stop holding the button. You can turn off the unit by yourself, and prying the button out would be really stupid, so instead you have this button here that turns off the electromagnet immediately. By looking at the plug, you might assume it's, well, it's a standard plug, but it's actually not. It's a bit wider apart. So if you get one of these units, make sure that you have the right wire. Here on the back we have few things, apart from basic information about what kind of speakers this unit accepts. We have obviously speaker connections and 3 fuses for different parts of the unit. And here on the bottom, a printed price of 414 rubles. And here on the side we have few connections, a line out, and this connector here is for wired radio network that was pretty much in every household in the Soviet Union. Electrophone or a tape deck connection, a radio or a TV connection, and two inputs for the microphones. What's really nice about this exact unit that is using the mechanism UPM34, which we will look at a bit later, is that as soon as the unit turns on, it doesn't start spinning the capstan. Very commonly, these units have developed an illness of a misshapen idler. This happens because, well, these units use an idler to select speeds, and of course, if the idler is pushed into the metal, after a bit of time it will lose its correct shape. But unfortunately, this didn't help this exact unit. You can hear pretty well the rumbling noise. Of course, you can replace the idler wheel in here and this will terminate the noise, but some people suggest that you can just remove the idler completely and replace it with a belt. Of course, this will remove the function of speed selection, but the argument for that is that, well, 9-speed audio quality is only suitable for speech or very low quality recordings. Also, this tape is not empty, it has a recording on it, but you might notice that the volume meters are not moving. This is because this modification of the unit does not show the volume of a recording, and only does that when you are recording onto the tape, which can be easily fixed if you really want to. But it's a shame that this was not a feature from the factory. And speed of rewinding or fast forwarding is pretty much the same in both directions, since it's powered by the same motor through the same amount of wheels. It is not the fastest, but it's acceptable. And now, before the unit stops, I want to show how the auto stop works. Let's turn on the playback and look here closely. There is a little lever under the tape and a little bracket on top of it. As soon as this will go up, because lack of the tape, it will shut off the drive. Now for the sound demonstration, I would really like to move this to my hi-fi. But how do I do that? Well, Soviet engineers decided that a handle would really help, and it is a bit comical since the unit is really heavy, but the handle is always welcome. And the last feature, also the first one that you've seen, is its cover that has a little catch here and locks into place from two sides. And to open it, you have to push two buttons on both sides to release it. Literally everything is made out of metal, even these handles are made out of pretty thick metal. The mechanism itself, like I mentioned before, is the UPM34. Of course, it's not exactly hi-fi, but it works. So if I move this handle, this is fast forwarding, we can see that now the motor will be linked with this spool. Now, if I do the opposite thing, now it is linked to this spool. When we play, it will be linked both with the flywheel and the take-up spool. All of this is done through a lot of levers, and this thing has pretty complex kinematics in that regard. But how does speed selection work? Right now the mechanism is set to play and the rubber wheel is touching both this bigger part of the spindle, bigger radius, and the flywheel. If I change the speed to the 9th speed, it will move to the back and it will be interacting with a smaller radius. So the speed selection here works like on some very old, inexpensive record players from the 60s or 70s by changing the position of a rubber wheel. And now, as soon as we give power to the unit, the main motor starts spinning, which is pretty normal for this kind of machine. But the capstan is not, because for saving the condition of the rubber wheel, it's not interacting with capstan until you put it into play mode. Also, as you can see, most of the rubber stuff inside is looking wobbly, and this is because it's original. Nothing here was changed since then. And the fact that it still manages to work is pretty amazing to me. Now for demonstration purposes I will leave some tape here, and we will be able to see how it works in playback. So in here you probably already noticed the solenoid, and this is actually used for the pause mode. The wheel is not spinning, so the tape would not move forward. Also on top of here we can see the brakes, and they are used to stop the spools from spinning when we are done winding. So this can spin freely since we want to take tape from here to here. But when we stop, you can see that this spool stops immediately. Same happens here. But this brake is a little bit worse and needs maintenance, since this thing is really old and it needs a little help. Of course, this unit also has a lot of micro switches, but this would take a bit too long to describe all of them. And you probably don't even need this to understand how this machine works. And now, to turn off the machine, we just push this button, and as you could see, it automatically stopped the mechanism fully. As you might have noticed, all the stuff, or at least most of it, that I made reviews on is broken or was broken, and I have to fix it. The reason for that is very limited finances. So if you wish to help me making such videos, the link for the donation will be in the description. Even the smallest donation will be deeply appreciated.
Цялата нощ за съседите пак ставам лош. Аз съществувам само с рок. Рок, само рок. Аз избирам рок по всяко време. Рок, само рок. Всеки би могъл от мен да вземе. Рок дискотека имам у нас. В нея влюбен съм на слуда страст. Аз съществувам само с рок. Моят дом е пълен с рок. Не спазвам време и нямам срок. Ден и нощ, вечно чува се рок. Приятели минават край нас. Дали с рок привличам ги аз. Само рок пее всеки мой час. Рок, само рок. Рок, само рок. И нямам срок. Ден и нощ, вечно чува се рок. Приятели минават край нас. Дали с рок привличам ги аз. Само рок пее всеки мой час. Само рок пее всеки мой час. Само рок пее всеки мой час. Само рок пее всеки мой час.